Yeah.
All right. Full send. And we are here. Welcome, everybody. Whoever everybody turns out to be, ultimately within years into the future. We're going to be talking about some fun and interesting things, particularly about Pluto. So a lot that I think we'll be learning, some new fun and exciting things. So it should be worth, at least worth listening to part of it, because it's now been about 20 years. So
we're commemorating. This is a commemorative.
It is commemorative
episode, right? We are commemorating the declassification of Pluto as a planet.
Yeah, and it's actually been closer to 20 years than it has to 15 years. So it's interesting. So I guess
we'll do 20 years early. It'll be fine.
That's right. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. So I'm Dr. Staggs.
I'm Dr. D.
And we're going to dig into some of this fun business.
Only the most relevant topics.
I mean, you've got to start. You've got to start somewhere.
Honestly, this is. I was going to say, actually,
I think
for all of our episodes, this is actually the only one that's really not been in the news for current events wise.
Right.
Recently.
That's fair. That's fair.
I mean, I guess zombie apocalypse. This is actually less ridiculous than zombie apocalypse.
This is slightly less ridiculous in a lot of ways, actually. So, yeah. So let's go ahead and do the primer. I don't know if you'll be able. You should be able to hear. I just don't know if it'll be on the stream or not. So, all right. So let's go ahead and do this.
In the visual above my head, we have what are called the terrestrial planets. These are the planets that have surfaces you can walk on.
This is one of the well-known experts.
Venus, Earth, and Mars. The moon is also shown there, which looks quite small, but something to know about our moon is that it's one of the largest moons in the solar system.
Well, they explain exactly why
most of the
they became Pluto's enemy number one.
Are dwarfed by the size of our moon. We have an uncommonly large moon relative to us, in spite of how small that looks. So the point I want to make here is Pluto, we have history here with Pluto in this institution. Back in 2000, when we opened the Rose Center for Earth and Space, we were kind of the first out of the box to reassociate Pluto's identity from the company of planets to the the dirty ice balls in the outer solar system, the Kuiper Belt. And so we were sort of raked over the coals by the press saying, and especially little kids, angry, pissed off third graders saying, how could you just because it's small, how could you do that? And they're thinking that size was an issue. And in fact, it had much less to do with size than you might imagine. If we just go to the next slide here, what do we have? So now we have the gas giants, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, relative to a segment of the sun. And then you get to see how small Earth is relative to the rest of the action there. Because Earth is included in this for scale. So here's a point I'll make, and I don't get to make this often enough, that Jupiter is bigger compared to Earth than Earth is compared to Pluto. Okay, I don't know how else to conjugate those verbs in that sentence, but does it make sense to you? All right, so in other words, if we're on Earth saying we're big enough to be a planet, but Pluto isn't, then imagine what Jovians could be saying. They're saying the solar system has only 4 planets. Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, and everything else is just debris. So I'm certain all life forms of Jupiter are thinking exactly that way. So you can't invoke size exclusively to diss Pluto in this regard. But allow me to tell you that our moon, as small as it was compared to Earth, has 5 times the mass of Pluto. Yeah, some people over here. Yeah, so Pluto lovers never were told that, were you? Right? Yeah, so just welcome to the company of informed people, all right, regarding Pluto. But we knew this. Pluto had other issues. And so after some thinking about this, Pluto got demoted to a dwarf planet status on several grounds, one of which is that it orbits the sun in a region of the solar system where there's plenty of other stuff orbiting there, which in total dwarfs the mass of Pluto itself. So Pluto does not, how would we call it, own its orbital place in the solar system. It's shared with countless thousands of other icy bodies that rival Pluto in size and composition. So what we really discovered was that Pluto really never was the planet we wanted it to be. In fact, it just went 60 years before we had discovered its icy brethren orbiting beyond Neptune. And these icy brethren we've named for an astronomer at mid-century named Gerard Kuiper, who hypothesized that there could be this repository of excess debris that didn't participate in the formation of the rest of the planets. So Pluto is a very healthy Kuiper Belt object, but a really lame planet.
And so there we have it. There we have the truth behind Pluto as delivered by the experts. So it's interesting, and they make a few key points there. It's not all about size. So that's, I think, one important aspect of it. So
Yeah.
that's the fact that there's a lot of other stuff out there also that is similar in mass to Pluto is also interesting.
I think the thing that really sends it over the edge, right, is regardless of size and mass, right, is that mass is really the driving factor when you think about it. But the fact that it doesn't have its own, I guess to quote Neil deGrasse Tyson, right, it doesn't own its own orbital place, right? And that is, its orbit isn't as stationary as the rest of the planets,
Yeah.
the things that we call planets, right? And that is a function of its mass and the fact that the whole Kuiper belt is out there. And we talked a little bit about gravity in one of I guess the first episode on flat Earth, right?
We did.
Where gravity on Earth is one thing, right? But there's gravity between all of the celestial bodies, right? There's gravity that's constantly pulling us towards and away from all the other celestial bodies. And what is the most important characteristic in this equation that determines what has more gravity than something else, right? And that's its mass, right? The mass is what really really drives that. And so if our moon has more mass than Pluto, right, then that has to tell you something, right? That if Pluto were orbiting our Earth, it wouldn't even have the same effect on our tides as our moon does, right?
Yeah.
It would have much less of an effect on anything. And in fact, we would probably end up pulling it into our planet, right? Because that's how gravity works.
Yeah.
I know. I understand why people were upset at I understand why people were upset at the beginning of this 20 years ago ish, right? When this was declassified as a planet, right? You're making it's kind of a flat Earth thing, right? In the sense that people are outraged that something is being changed that was thought of as canon for so long, right?
Yeah.
But we do, as scientists, engineers, people, need to be able to admit when we have made a mistake and act
Right.
accordingly.
Right. Yeah. And that's a something that I think has been helpful for a lot of those factors. So there's a lot of missing or even misinformation out there. So there's been a lot of discussion of a lot of these options and factors, right? So the fact that it's been declassified has created some additional headaches and issues, just for a number of reasons there. So
is it now? I forget. It's classified now as a planetoid, correct?
it's classified as a dwarf planet.
A dwarf planet.
Is what I understand. So what precisely is a dwarf planet, that I am not certain. So that's something that I need to sort of look up myself and refresh on. But a dwarf planet is at least something that we know to be below what the normal threshold is for considering something a planet. So small in mass and doesn't really own its own orbital space. They call it clearing its own orbital space, which makes it sound like the Pluto had to put on some boxing gloves and really get after all the other ice balls out there.
Though I might be way off base here because I'm remembering this from like a 6th or 7th grade science class, right? Maybe before that, but when we first went over the planets and they were talking about Pluto, right? Pluto's orbit shifts. It switches places with doesn't it switch places with Neptune in certain times in its orbit?
It
kind of shifts in and out and in and out, and it's not elliptical in nature in a
right.
certain
It's
sense.
not in the traditional sense for sure, which is definitely an issue. So yeah, there's a range of problems and difficulties there. So that creates some of the challenges with this is it doesn't there isn't a better explanation for why it switches around, right? And so that creates I think some of the confusion points as well. Why is it switching orbits and doing the strange stuff? Because that was the thing that when we were children didn't really make sense, is why do planets behave this way except for Pluto and breaks the rules? Well, it's the little rambunctious guy, and those like to break rules.
It's the toddler of the
yes,
it's the toddler of the universe.
very much. Yeah, it's
galaxy. Sorry.
Yeah, it's very much like my video end of the stream, which is acting up in a rather major way. But I'll work on that.
It's fine. You're looking good
in the background. So yeah, I mean, I figured I would just put the helmet on and nobody will know the difference, right? So that's the cool thing about being able to pull off a helmet, is knowing exactly how that is supposed to work.
Yep.
So
for real. Yeah, I mean, so let's take it back, right? Take it back for 20 years ago. This news hits you. Okay. How did you personally feel? Were you what group of were you with the pissed off third graders or
I was probably with
where did you stand?
I was more closely with the pissed off third graders, just for the sake that it's something that I was really frustrated by. and it's really primarily for this reason. So one of the things that that I was showing you here, and I'll bring up on the screen, just because what the heck, video is not cooperating anyway.
Because it's super cool anyway.
It is super cool anyway, and so I may leave this up for a moment while we're figuring out some of the other things and seeing if I can convince the video to come back, which probably isn't going to happen, but that's okay. The one of the interesting things about the whole process is, especially for me growing up, having had family members that worked for different parts of NASA projects and parts for the lunar lander, having family members that worked directly at NASA, not just peripherally with some of the contracting companies. Space travel and that whole thing was really, really super exciting on the whole. So it was something that you think you have a pretty good idea what's happening, what's going on in the universe, and then suddenly that's not the case anymore, and then you get this idea that, well, I'm just going to have all these bits and pieces working and functional. There's just too much to be there's too much out there as far as information, evidence, all of this development, all of the camera equipment and things that they're taking up there with them. Like right now we're watching this DSLR, really, really high grade DSLR. I think this is literally just an insulated something like, and you can see a second one there on his strapped to his one of his main hooks there at his abdomen. It's literally just like a commercial DSLR with additional insulation, just in this pouch, right? And so they're not, sitting there tweaking with settings and lighting and some of the other things.
No, they're just
because a lot of these cameras are just super duper high quality to begin with. But
well, I'm sure they tweak them on the inside, right? And then kind of set it and forget it.
Yeah, I would think so, because the lighting would be really tricky. But there we go. There's another like aspect of this. Isn't a blurry lens. There's no filtering up there because there's no atmosphere, or there is atmosphere, but it's so thin as to be immeasurable at this height. But you can just see how beautiful and astonishing this is. This is on the Space Official channel, and this is just I grew up dreaming about some of these things, and so yes, in a lot of ways this whole process influenced me, and that's part of the reason why I was in that group of pissed off third graders, right? Because you turn around and say that, well, Pluto's not a planet, you start to attack the integrity of this whole space travel thing, the space station, and all this other stuff. And this particular bit, even though it's being streamed to YouTube live, it is not live itself right now. So there's all kinds of things that are happening, and that it's also important to appreciate, like the number of people that are like, what studio is this recorded in or whatever. The level of your ignorance astonishes me to a degree that I can't even articulate. So anyway, this is some of the stuff that I've seen a lot of examples of. I haven't seen, obviously this kind of a high quality video feed for a lot of it. But it's absolutely incredible. And the fact that they have better and better and better camera gear, there's just a lot of really cool stuff that we can see out there. So I think the important thing to keep in mind for all of these classifications and things, talking about the astronauts and talking about the flat Earth and whatever else, you can't go in and cherry pick and say, oh well, these groups are, all of these photos are synthesized and stuff, because like none of the photos that you're seeing there are painted and rendered from data by some conspiracy artist in NASA. Like
right.
that's the image processing power to render that real time as artificial surface would be ridiculous. So anyway, that's some of the things that I've seen happen, and it's kind of frustrating as to why they would reclassify something. So
Well, I mean, it's also not something that they would do lightly, though, right?
No.
I mean, that's. I'm imagining that the paperwork is probably significant headache. I mean, if you want to change your own name, I mean,
right, that is a huge problem. If you're trying to change the classification of a planet, the good news is it was basically done by a committee vote, is what I found out in this whole process of doing the research for this. So I can make all kinds of faces at the camera right now, and with the mask on, nobody can see. So that's pretty epic.
Yep. Sure.
So
100%.
I think the important things are to understand just how much work and effort went into a lot of this process. So they did a lot of data taking, manipulation, calculations, and they took a lot of that data and determined that this was not a real consistent set of data, right? So you're looking at the thing that's standing out as an outlier for the information that's available, and I think that's the hard part. So yeah, it's difficult to look at that and think anything other than it's nice to have grown up in a world where we had Pluto as a planet, but it frankly doesn't matter now to the same degree.
When I heard, I distinctly remember my thoughts. Right, I heard about it, and I thought to myself, "Man, that sucks." And that was pretty much the end of it. Right.
Everything I've been told is a lie.
Right.
Is how I felt.
No, I was just like, huh. Well, that sucks.
Right.
Now I got to keep doing my fluids homework because that's due tomorrow. And
right. Yes.
So the effect on my day-to-day, right, was not
very high, but it also highlights a very important point, though, about integrity in science.
Yeah.
Right. The idea that scientists are generally, and this is probably as controversial as it gets, generally much more willing to turn around and say, oh, yep, this data tells us that turns out we were wrong this whole time, so we're going to have to come up with a new theory to explain this phenomena. That's not something that for instance, medical field likes to do to the same degree, despite loving
I would say,
to call themselves scientists.
I would say it depends on the branch of science that you are um, that you're affiliated with, right?
Yeah.
I feel
I mean, if you're
physicists,
climate change scientist, then scientist shouldn't be applied as a meaningful term, right?
all the
Because
controversies right here, right now.
I'm just seeing how many things I have to mention before YouTube
Climate
bans us.
change.
Right? Climate change hoax. What else will piss off the algorithm? The fact of the matter is the climate is always changing and has always been changing. What are you saying?
What?
I'm saying I have weeds that have grown to like 6 feet tall in my backyard, and the people that think that the earth is fragile and dying and dead, and that by driving a truck you're going to murder the earth, have clearly not actually had to de-weed a field ever. Like, they've lived in their high-rise and they struggle to get a mint plant to grow on their window box or something.
It's very aggressive. You don't want to grow that.
Well, I mean, I might want to grow that here to replace the weeds that are worse.
So at least your weeds are functional.
Fight the weeds. That's right. Fight the weeds with other weeds.
Yeah. So I would say that physicists in particular are very more inclined to follow the data than other branches of science, right?
Yeah.
Wherever you have a pure science, right? And I'm talking about theoretical stuff, not things that are used in application. That is where you tend to see this integrity of, well, the data says this thing, so now we need to have a fundamental shift in what we were thinking, because yes, we have experiments that proved it one way, but now we have disproven this entire thing, so we need to take a closer look. That's more of a theoretical approach, right?
Yeah.
When you get into people who are into application, it becomes, as engineers, we're always told, oh, you want to have data driven results and this and that, but it's different, right? Because there's also the old adage, if it works, broke, don't fix it.
Right.
Right. So it's a toss-up depending on who you talk to. I think more academics are interested in sussing out the truth, but on a day-to-day basis, people really just want something that works. And this might be controversial to say, but I'm going to say that probably 90% of the people in the world do not care about quantum entanglement and whether or not you're using a relativistic view of the universe or a Newtonian view of the universe, right?
Yeah.
They care that they're not falling off the earth. That's what they care about.
Right.
Which may or may not be flat, but I think those pictures that we showed from the NASA video are pretty conclusive. But I am a filthy, dirty, round earther. So.
Right. Yeah. You dirty globist, you. So yeah, there's.
It's not the worst thing I've been called today. So.
Right. That's only because student evaluations came back and they were not as awesome as they sometimes can be. I think that has something to do with the fact that the Rona has wrecked our entire universe. We have shut down planet Earth for.
I haven't seen the rest of the universe, so I can't really make a broad sweeping statement like that.
I can, because I'm an expert in one area, and so that makes me an expert in all areas, basically. So.
Gotcha.
That's pretty much how it works. So
The Rona.
yeah, the Rona. So I also have I think a helpful clip that I can include specifically about explaining things through the lens of Rick and Morty.
Why don't we do a model of the solar system? That's
Sure,
what my
no,
dad
I
did with
think
me
that
when
would
I was
be,
your age.
Oh, okay.
insightful
You know, Rick's in his
in these
lab
times
making
of confusion.
cyborgs and wormholes and all
While
that
you're
weird
queuing that
stuff,
up,
but this is real science. A man and his boy
I
making
did pose the
planets.
question. I
Hey,
don't
how about
think
we use a
anybody's
ping
watching
pong ball
this
for
tonight,
Pluto,
but
and then
I don't
Jupiter?
think so.
Actually,
I'm-
I don't think
I'm
Pluto's
I'm barely
a planet.
watching tonight, which is a struggle.
Of course, Pluto's a planet, son. I
So
learned that in the third
let's-
grade.
before
Well,
we
yeah,
get to
but,
the,
you know, they changed
the
it.
Rick and Morty clip. What are your thoughts on the other Plutos? that we
The
have?
the other Plutos.
Yes,
That I
the
mean,
dog and the Roman god of the underworld.
that is an interesting one for sure.
It's something.
The yeah, so I think really that's going to come back around to having it's all about how we're classifying data and how that whole process is being done.
So, all right. So the dog Pluto. All right. This is the thing that I've struggled with, and I'm wrapping my head around. Why can't he talk, but why can Goofy, who is also a dog, talk?
I mean,
You at home, think about that
yeah.
and let that seep into your brain. Right?
I
What's
don't
going on here?
I don't know that anyone will ever have the answers to that. I don't know
Anybody
that they
from
will.
Disney who is watching this, first of all, sponsorship. Second of all, second
Right.
of all, get the frozen head out of storage and plug it into the Futurama jar and
Right.
ask Walt. Ask Walt. Why?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think that should clarify some things. So,
Speaking of the controversy.
yeah. There's a
Having fun
few.
with my voice changer today, I guess.
That's good. Got to keep entertained somehow because life has been mad. I did not go
Someone's
participate
gotta
in
be
the racist, crazy protest marches on the state capitals and whatever else. I did not go block the freeway with my human body today because people are doing that all over the country today because reasons.
Look, I'm all for you exercising your right to peaceful protest. I think that as an American, that is your right, and if you feel strongly about something and that's what you want to do, excellent.
Yeah.
I don't
Go
think
for it.
anybody's going to argue that this wasn't a tragedy that could have easily been avoided. Okay, but when you see things like looting and things like that, that is when you are diminishing your own influence in what is happening, and you are turning this into something that is now not genuine, right? You're turning this into a disingenuous thing because you are doing something, you are responding to and so your feelings of outrage with violence, and by taking it out on people that had nothing to do,
Yeah.
right? If you're going to go out and looting, right, you are stealing from somebody who is making their livelihood
Right.
off of selling goods,
Right.
which is wrong.
Right. So somehow you walking out of Target with free lamps is going to avenge the death of this guy. Yeah, let's
It's
talk
not.
about things that don't logically follow.
Right.
Because
However,
that's a case.
if you want to go out and protest peacefully, right, and speak your mind,
Yeah.
that's your right. That is your right as a human being, and feel free to exercise that all you want. But but don't take out your frustrations on people and who aren't even involved in this, just because you got riled up in a mob mentality.
Yeah,
And don't
mob,
hide behind that shield just because you wanted to do something that was
right.
immoral and
Mob
illegal.
justice is generally not. So yeah, no. And there's a clear scriptural point to the law on this particular topic, and it's pretty interesting. So there's a lot to be said there, but that may be a totally separate show topic.
I think that might be.
So yeah, that could be one that we find the fallout next week. There may be a little more information on it, but it's
maybe
it's interesting because that's a very much a developing story, and we will actually have information, more actual information by then than we do right now. Because there's a big difference between gossip and then being able to make a clear assessment of available eyewitness accounts, and in this case by cell phone and security camera and all the other things. So lots and lots of interesting bits to that whole story. So that may be what we do to tackle next week. But for now, I think we need to hear for why Pluto is a planet from Rick and Morty, because I think that'll be fairly entertaining. So let me go ahead and run this. I think there we have it. There's all of the helpful info about why people are so frustrated. It's that a committee of jerks got together and then decided that Pluto is not a planet anymore. And so you're welcome to disagree, but that doesn't change the classification.
It doesn't, and you can. So I think this is a common theme of the things that we seem to talk about, right? Just because you disagree, right, doesn't. So just because you disagree with somebody doesn't make that other person inherently evil and bad. Number one.
Right.
You can disagree with somebody and still be civil and still be friends. But the other thing is, right, just because you believe something doesn't necessarily make it true. Okay.
I feel like that's
i.e. flat Earth.
Right. Yeah, that's so many things. Yeah, that's that's an interesting study. That's almost a separate topic unto itself as well. So yeah. I think the takeaway for me on the research on this is that when we learn that the information that we had was not complete, and that getting sort of the rest of the data set tells us why, then we need to update our understanding of how the universe works. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You need to having new knowledge and being able to apply that, right? Now again, is in general, is your day to day going to be affected by what for lack of a better term, the committee of jerks discovers about the celestial movements of the universe, right? Probably not. But it's nice to know that after, I mean, this isn't as big as the controversy of, oh, the Earth orbits around the sun or the sun orbits around the Earth, right? This isn't Earth centric versus heliocentric universe, right? That's not this big, but this is as big as that's gonna get, right? This is a fairly large scientific controversy in that it was something that was held to be true for so long, and got a full reversal, right?
Yeah.
And that's not something that is easy by any means to do, right? And so the evidence has to be there, and people who are far smarter than I am are the ones who are debating this, right? I'm not claiming to be an astrophysicist by any stretch of the imagination. Right?
It's okay. We can't all be geniuses, right? I'm a self-absorbed genius, but I'm not afraid to admit it. That's why I wear a mask.
Fair. Yeah. Right, and like I said in the chat, 1,000 likes on this video, and Dr. Tesla will have a face reveal.
I think 1,000 views, period, would warrant that. But I think a lot of people are watching the other live streams, like all the burning, looting, rioting, epic battles with
the
police.
Reptilian episode, right?
That's right.
1,000 also gets you the reptilian episode, so you're now pulling double duty with this 1,000.
That's right, double duty with 1,000. So yeah, if we get 1,000, I'll have to get a real webcam that actually cooperates, because that's also helpful. So yeah, I think there's
Amazon is selling smart plugs for 99 cents now. So
yeah,
go for it. You can get Alexa to turn your lights on and off for 99 cents.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, that's because they're listening.
Plus the cost.
They're listening through your light bulbs. Yeah, there you go. There's because they're listening to everything. They want to record all of the ins and outs of your family conversations and process all the data. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue resisting and continue throwing their algorithm for a loop by buying parts for 3D printers and other stuff, not just basic necessities. So
are you trying to make your own Alexa? What you're trying to do?
So funny story. I bought a used clearanced no boxed toy from the Walmart clearance section that had clearly been used and returned broken. And I bought it for very, very cheap. Frankly, they really, if we weren't in a self-checkout line because COVID means everybody's got to do things robotically, then I would have said, really, technically, you should be paying me to haul this away. But I bought it because it's a little battery powered bubble blowing machine that's shaped like a frog, and I have small children, and so it's logically follows, right? So I looked at it and I was like, yeah, I'm 100% certain that's broken, but I think I can fix it.
Nice.
And so I brought it home, took it apart, and was easily able to fix what was wrong with it, because they designed it in such a way that the little motor like comes up to temperature and slows down, and then it can't maintain a very high speed anymore, so you have to like let it cool off. And then so what people were doing is thinking it would run out of the battery, they would pick it up and it would dump all of the soap solution for the bubbles into the bottom battery box, and then it would start shorting and doing other stuff. And so it had poor conductivity because of the corrosion caused by the soap solution in the battery box. And so I was easily able to fix it, but it's just one of those dumb things that I'm that kind of person that can walk through the Walmart clearance aisle of broken toys and things, go, that'll only take me about 5 minutes to fix. I'll go ahead and buy that one, because the girls really love the fact that bubbles happen from the frog, and it's the greatest thing ever. And
everybody
it cost me less than getting a drink at a fast food place. So I mean, we're on the right track there. So it wouldn't be untoward for me to develop my own Alexa, but I'd really rather have, if anything, a Jarvis, kind of like the Hacksmith.
I mean, you can change the Alexa's name. Did you know that?
Well, sure, but
I know.
it's I would like my own version that I program myself, that could have like a display and seem like it was had a mind of its own. But yeah, after all of the epic struggles and electronics battles that I'm doing with these used 3D printers, which is why I haven't uploaded any of the videos about how to take in, repair, and actually make use of 3D printers that are used.
Yeah.
That's why I haven't been able to develop any of that content, is because it's very time consuming. And it's very challenging, to where I'm having to completely modify and throw away a lot of what was there originally. And so the basic frame and structure, the stepper motors, the main controller board all remain the same, but I'm even having to make modifications to the controller board and the hot end and some of the other stuff to replace it with more reliable parts. And that has some struggles because some of them are built for 24 volt, but this is set up as a 12 volt supply system, so you don't have the power to push through a 24 volt heater, so you need to replace that with a 12 volt heater. And yeah, so it's just one step after another, but eventually I think I will have fixed all the broken stuff in this, and that's a process that most people aren't willing to go through, because that's total insanity, right? And so
it's
it will have ended up being about the same cost to just get the printer I was recommending for you, for instance, the Ender 3, right, by the time you're done fixing all of the stuff on these. So yeah,
that's certainly a thing.
So
certainly a thing.
Yeah, the so we'll see. There's we may be able to do an episode on why 3D printing is a black hole, because there's lots of
time and
lots
money.
of ways. Yes, it is lots of ways that's true. So I don't know.
No.
But I think we've covered why the important parts of what Pluto's reclassification is. I think we're good
we've
there.
hit the notes.
Yeah,
we're good. I think we'll call it a short one tonight. Next week we'll do something else. I don't know. Let's do something.
Yeah, I've got
Figure it out.
I've got some ideas. So I think there's a
the Twitter controversy.
There's right. Yeah, there's a lot of current event
basically
stuff.
That our president is going to sue Twitter. Basically. All right. Anyway,
there's lots of good content options. So yeah, we'll have to come up with one where we preferably don't have to spend a lot of time doing math on why the UAP videos are.
You know what? I think even better. I liked the topic that you did suggest earlier today. Is the Earth a planet?
There's a whole video on that, actually, about whether or not Earth is in fact a planet. So yeah, we've got some things to sort out for sure. So
or do you think that it is the top of a turtle's back that is swimming in outer space?
So I actually have all of those references to origin stories in one of the texts that I kept as a reference. It was written by a professor that I took a class in, and so I took on his syllogism about the necessity of God's non-existence, and I shredded it and handed it back to him in pieces. So lots of options for content in the future shows, and I think we'll get to where there's some more interesting stuff. It's hard to avoid some of the more frustrating current event topics for right now. So
no,
that's
I agree.
part
Staying
of what
current is probably good.
Yeah.
For now.
So
look, you guys know what'll happen. 1,000 views, right? 1,000 views, you get. Make this easy. It's like an infomercial, right? 1,000 views, you get the face reveal, but also the reptilian episode.
Yeah, I really am curious about the research that I'll have to do on that one.
Yeah, and I think what were we saying? 5,000, and we'll actually interview one. So
right, that's right. Yeah, I like it. So, yeah, I think they're pretty easy to find, and they do like to do interviews. So there's that. So
well, we do live in an area where most of them would tend to flock to.
Yes. So yeah, we do, because you could be cold-blooded and live here quite nicely. That's yeah. True. So all right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Eventually, theoretically, in the future, and if not, then nobody will ever see this. So that's the good news. Have a good evening, all.
Yeah, we can say whatever we want, and nobody will ever know the difference.
True story.
Have a great weekend, everybody.